this is the first live crime with Cara Hunter. Thank you, Cara.
Hiya.
Above Cara's head, we've got a latest book, All the Rage.
That's right. Yeah.
If you could tell us a little bit about that, Cara, to start us off, that'd be lovely.
Okay. Well, this, as some of your members might know, this is the fourth one in the D.I. Hawley series. So we've had a few stories leading up to this one, and obviously the stories of the police team have progressed over time. So we find out a bit more about their lives, and particularly about Adam and his wife in this one, how they met, for example. But the book itself starts with the discovery of a young girl walking on a relatively deserted street in Oxford in a state of great distress. But she doesn't want to go to the police, and she doesn't want to press charges or pursue the matter. And of course, this is very, very mysterious, and it gets Hawley thinking straight away, there must be more to this than meets the eye.
Your starts are always very intriguing. How do you decide to start prologues and things?
Oh, it's interesting. A lot of my ideas for beginnings get sparked off by true crime in one form or another. So this particular one, there was a story about 4 years ago now, where almost exactly the same thing actually happened in Oxford. There was a young girl who was found wandering on the street who looked as if she'd been attacked in some way, and it became a really big local story, and I think it was on some of the national news as well. It lasted for about 3 or 4 weeks. People were trying to, there was a lot of nervousness in the city. Young people weren't going out on their own. Police were running a huge investigation. And then suddenly, after about 3 weeks, there was an announcement that they were no longer looking for anybody in connection with the supposed abduction, which is what she told them had happened. And obviously, it didn't happen. I don't know what happened. I don't know the person concerned. I don't know anything about her, but clearly something went very badly wrong. But that idea of that particular incident was what sparked off the seed, if you like, for this book. So that's where that started. It's a bit like In the Dark, if you've read that. That was sparked by the Joseph Fritzl case in Austria, of the man who imprisoned his own daughter in an underground basement for, I think, years. I can't remember exactly how long, but a very long time.
Yeah, I have read that one, and it involves children in all three of the books I've read of yours so far. Why are you comfortable with writing children?
You're not the first person to say that. It's not a deliberate choice on my part or some sort of agenda of any kind. I think it's probably because I write stories that are based on families, the very domestic focus, because I think that's where most real crime actually starts. Obviously, we're all used to these films and TV series where you have, complex serial killers and people who maraud around the city or wear masks or whatever. And there's a time and place for that type of thriller as well. But that's not what interests me. I'm interested in sorts of crimes that are much more likely to actually happen. And those are the sorts of things that stem primarily from the home, one way or another. So that's why I suppose most of my stories have children in them at some point, even though they might not be the central focus of the story. And the young people in this book are not children, really. They're older than that. They're sort of teenagers. Whereas the previous one, No Way Out, yes, it was 2 quite small children. But again, it was all about that family dynamic and why things had gone wrong.
The family dynamic's crucial with your police characters as well. How did you manage to develop this idea for the first story? Because it's gone all the way through, and it's been the thing that's kept me mostly intrigued, really.
Yes, I suppose it's the Adam character and his backstory, isn't it? And the dreadful sadness in his own life, having lost his son, and feeling that he might never have another child. It's been a running theme, and it's connected in different ways and at different levels to the crimes that he's investigating. And I didn't plan any of this out. I mean, when I wrote Close to Home, I had no idea whether it would even be published, never mind that I might be lucky enough to have a series on my hands. So I didn't plan it out. I mean, I've heard someone once at a crime festival saying that before he wrote his first book, he had a 10-book plan all down as what he was going to do. Well, believe me, I didn't have that. I think I've just been very lucky that Adam's turned into a very interesting character, and people really warm to him. He's even had some marriage proposals now, which I think is lovely.
I thought that when I discovered that All the Rage was out on my birthday, I thought this is a pretty nice little clue for the fact that I should have had you on today, I think.
Yeah. Well, there you are. I hope it was a reasonable present.
I should enjoy reading it after, because I managed to read 2 of your books recently in the last month.
Mm-hmm.
Because of your NHS plot, NHS thing with Close to Home.
That's right. Yes, I arranged that with Penguin. Actually, I came up with the idea. A friend of mine, we were talking about it, and she said, "Well, isn't that something you could do?" And I thought, "Well, I'd love to do it, but I don't know whether it's practically possible to do it." But I talked to Penguin, and they were really, really excited about the idea, which was lovely, and we got it organised really, really quickly. So yes, anyone who works at the NHS can get a free e-copy. Obviously, we can't do physical copies at the moment; it's too complicated. But you can get a free e-copy of Close to Home, and the offer's open for however long. There's no end date on it at the moment, because obviously we realise that NHS staff probably don't have a huge amount of time for reading at the moment. So it's a small thing. Of course, it's only a small thing, but it's something I can do.
I love the idea, and I just thought that it needed highlighting, really, considering what going through, I think.
Oh, thank you. As I say, a little thing, but little things add up, don't they? So
mainly all the characters in your series, mainly the detective ones, they've all got little roles, but each of them are getting bigger with each book. Have you got any idea who might take a bigger role in your new one that's going to come out in February?
Yes, well, that's a good question. I've got various things that are happening in this new book. So I think the dynamics, talk about dynamics earlier, the dynamics in the team, I think, are going to shift a bit in this new one. So watch out for that. But you're right, it's nice to have a team where they have quite distinct personalities and they're good at different things. And I also like the fact that the 2 women in the team, Summer and Everett, are good friends, because the cliche thing would have been to make them, rather, difficult with each other and suspicious of each other. But actually, it's really nice that they've become great mates, even though they don't appear to have a huge amount in common. But they're good friends, and I really like that. It's I think it's a nice underpinning for the team.
I noticed as well that after the end of No Way Out, that it kind of was going to get more complicated for Adam. You mentioned a thing about his wife and what happened to her in All the Rage as well. I mean, I've not read it, but I heard something when one of the people asked me about her attack in this one.
Yes, she's. That's. We now find out from All the Rage that Adam and Alex first met because she was a victim herself. So that's how they came to know each other. And that story runs underneath the main crime story in All the Rage, and is going on to, as anyone who's read All the Rage will know, is moving into the fifth book as well, because it's left tantalizingly unresolved at the end of book 4 with a really quite massive cliffhanger. So that's coming back, and if anyone's interested, don't worry, you will find out. I'm not going to just leave it there. It's forming the backbone of book 5. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of work on that right now. I'm working in lockdown. I mean, edits is one thing you can actually do at home.
I do enjoy cliffhanger methods. What made you decide to do that over other ways of finishing the book?
Finishing All the Rage. It was too big a story for one book, actually. There was so much to it that actually I thought I needed to give it enough time to breathe. And it was also, even though I say it myself, it was a pretty good story. So I didn't want to just do it all in one book. I wanted to take my time with it and really explore it. So, and it's nice to just leave a cliffhanger too. I know a lot of people have been really nice about the cliffhangers in the books. And say they really like them. So I thought, okay, well, I can do another one.
And is the one of the key features for me though is the way you deal with media stories and Facebook and the little comments at the end of each section, because that's unique in what I've seen so far.
I have seen other people do it, though not perhaps in quite the same way. I mean, that all stemmed from close to home, of course, because that book being about a missing child, when I didn't sort of sit down to say, right, I'm going to bring in social media into my book. That wasn't, an early, idea I had. It evolved out of the fact that I knew that any story, sadly, any story about a missing child these days has to have a social media angle. It's just how it would work. It's impossible that it would play out any other way. And also I wanted to look at how that impacts not only on the family, who might get some really appalling treatment at the hands of people who know absolutely nothing about them, but also how it impacts on the police who are trying to run an investigation in the public glare. And as we know, the police forces now do use social media to try to get information, to appeal for witnesses, that type of thing. But they also have to deal with the fact that social media is leaking into real life and affecting the way that people are behaving. And we see a really sad example of that hostility translating from social media into real life and close to home. So that's why I started doing that. And then and people liked it so much, and it seemed to be a really nice way of providing extra commentary on what's going on in the story that I've carried on. Not so much Twitter these days as there was in the first book, but different types of media and ways of giving my readers different types of narrative as well, or different types of information. So whether it's a map, or it's a crime scene drawing, or it's an interview transcript or a court case, it's ways of giving people other ways of looking at the story, and ways to be detectives themselves as well. And so many people have said they enjoy that bit. They like getting as much information as the police do, and sometimes more, because they get to see flashbacks as well, which of course the police don't. So it gives the reader a good fighting chance of working out what's going on.
When you were deciding about how to make the Oxford scene different to other Oxford writers, what made you decide on the method you went for?
Well, I definitely didn't want to just be like Morse again, because I think everyone's seen a lot of the Morse episodes, and I love them too. Don't get me wrong; they're one of my absolute all-time favorite TV series. But it's been done very well, that sort of approach to Oxford, with the quads and the dons and the sort of infighting between them and all that sort of thing. I just thought that there was not only no need to do that again, but I didn't think anyone particularly wanted to read it all over again from somebody else. So I also wanted to look at the city in a more realistic way, because I always used to think that with the Morse series, the way it was presented, the way Oxford was presented, was quite nostalgic. Even then, and never mind if you go back and look at Morse now, it's, you know, the city isn't like that. It's not as chocolate boxy as that. Yes, the architecture is as beautiful as that, but it's a modern city in many ways, in the same way as anywhere else. So I also wanted with the books to take people to other parts of the city that they probably didn't know, because I knew I could rely on the fact that they knew what the centre is like. Everybody knows around the world what Oxford looks like, so I don't have to keep describing that. I can take that for granted in my readers' minds, and then take them to other places and explore those and all the different overlapping communities that there are in this city.
What's your favourite place you've not explored yet that you want to?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't quite decided on that. I mean, some of the places I've included are some of my favourite places. So, for example, the Pitt Rivers Museum, which appears in Close to Home, is an absolutely fabulous place and absolutely scary as well. It always freaks me out every time I go there. So that was a really good one to be able to bring in somewhere that perhaps people didn't know about. And in All the Rage, there's some of the people who are involved in that live in a place that gets called the Lakes around here, because all of the streets are named after lakes in the Lake District. So, you know, Derwent and places like that. So that's quite a strange name for a town, for a section of a town that's that far away from any lakes. There aren't any lakes around here. So that was fun to take people there and show them what that very different part of town looks like.
If you were going to set it anywhere else that wasn't Oxford, where would you set it?
Oh, no idea. But actually, one thing I would like to do, and you know, Penguin are aware of this as well, is that I'd like to write a standalone sooner or later, which isn't a Hawley book. So that way I could go somewhere completely different, not even necessarily in the UK, and set something, I don't know, Vancouver or Sydney, or somewhere really glamorous like that. So that's on the agenda. But right now I've got a lot of Hawley left to do, and obviously while people still like the books, I'm going to keep writing them.
When listening to it on audio, what is so important to me is the narrator. What do you think of the two narrators that are involved in the Penguin?
Oh, they're great. I was really lucky. I got to meet them both at a Penguin event a while back, which was, you know, so I had a fangirl moment, which was, I don't know whether they were embarrassed. I thought it was fun. But no, they do a really great job. And it's always nice when they have bring in other voices as well. I mean, I don't know if you know, but Close to Home, they actually cast it more like a radio play, so that there are 37 different voices in that production, and a lot of them, in fact, probably most of them, aren't proper actors and actresses. They're people who work for Penguin, a lot of them, who were just given the chance if they wanted to come along and read one of the Twitter feeds, for example. And I'm in there as well. I'm one of the Twitter feeds too, so I got my Hitchcock moments, which is always a laugh.
Have you been in all of them for that? Or just the first one?
No, I wasn't. I was in Close to Home, and for All the Rage audiobook, I read the acknowledgements at the end in my own voice, which is nice because it made it more personal rather than having that read by somebody else. And I'll do that each time, I think.
The audiobooks are the way that a lot of us are getting books now, with traditional shops currently closing, and you can get digital on audio with the lockdown and stuff.
Yeah.
How are you absorbing new books at the minute? Are you going through audio, or are you still doing the traditional route?
Well, I was lucky. I get sent a lot of books as proof copies by other publishers who would like me to read them, which is really lovely. It's one of the perks of this job. So I've got a stack of those, which I got before lockdown started. I'm slowly working my way through those. But I read quite a bit on Kindle as well, especially if I'm going on holiday. Obviously, not that I'll be going on holiday anytime soon, but when I was going on holiday, I would read on Kindle, because obviously it's much lighter than carrying around a whole stack of paperbacks and my husband moaning at me about the weight of the suitcase. So yes, I do both. I love physical books. I know I love the sort of the comfort of a physical book, but Kindles are really practical, and I like listening as well. So I'm completely happy with any medium.
When I think about what I might do with my own book, because I'm trying to write one, what tips would you give me to make sure it's going to stick out?
Oh, yeah, well, that is hard. That is always hard to stand out, because the market's so busy. There's so many books being published and so many good ones. I think we're in a real golden age at the moment for crime fiction. There's so much good stuff. So standing out's really, really hard. It also sort of depends on what sort of book you want to write. I mean, if it's something where there's a great gimmick or a fantastic twist, or just as it were, good old-fashioned writing where it's a strong character and a good story and people want to turn the pages. I mean, it doesn't matter which way you do it. You've just got to find a way to sort of bring your reader in and keep them with you.
If there's any questions out there from anyone, I'm just going to ask Cara if she wouldn't mind reading the comments. Can you see them?
Oh, hold on. Hold on. I'll have to look at my laptop for this bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me just refresh that. Here we go. Okay, so I've got them now. So I'll start reading. How many? Joe's asked, how many more Fawleys are there to go? Very good question. I wish I knew the answer to that. I now have a contract to take us out to book 6. So there will be 6 definitely. And as I said before, if people want me to keep writing them, I will keep writing them. But so I don't know. Let's see. I'd like to keep doing it. It's a great way to earn a living. Okay, let me have a look, see if I can see a few more of these. Let's have a look. Are there any others? Who did you dedicate my first book to? To my husband. Sort of have to, really, don't you? What other writers inspired me growing up? Oh, loads. I read English at university, so I learnt my trade, I suppose, from the classics. But I've always been a really big fan of crime fiction in all its forms. So yes, I remember reading Agatha Christie really avidly and just loving it. And she can teach you a hell of a lot actually about how to put together a good solid plot and how to hide your villain in plain sight. She is the master of that. So I think the golden age writers have got a lot to teach us.
They definitely have, but with all the modern stuff and police procedurals, one of the questions I was asked to ask you about was accuracy in working with advisors and things too.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, I'm very lucky. I've got a really good team of professionals now. There's a funny story when I first wrote Close to Home. Of course, I didn't know whether it was ever going to be published, so I didn't go and check anything with, say, a police officer or anything like that, because I thought, well, these are important people doing a really important job, and I felt really bad about sort of turning up and saying, "Can you talk to me about my book," which might never see the light of day. So I didn't actually ask anyone. I did all my research online. And then when I went to see Katie, who's now my editor at Penguin, I met her for the first time. And one of the first things she said was, oh, this feels so authentic. You must have talked to loads of police officers, which is funny because, of course, I hadn't talked to any. But she then said, well, perhaps now's the time you probably ought to make a friend in the police force. So I actually did make contact with the chap who was then the local area inspector for Oxford, and I met him through my local councillor who I knew already. And he's since been advising me on all of them. He hadn't done that before, so it was new for him and for me, but it's been great fun. He's really approachable and he knows exactly what he's doing. And he's always really on the spot about this. The key difficult things with police procedurals, the most tricky one I'm always finding is the point at which a witness becomes an official suspect and has to be arrested, because it's all about what you can and can't ask someone before and after arrest. So he's always going through my draft interview transcripts and saying, no, we'd have arrested him by now and stuff like that. So that's all really interesting for me to see exactly how that thinking works. And the other one that I met early on and has been absolutely invaluable is Joey, who's the former CSI. He used to be a practicing CSI. He now does something else, but he really knows his stuff as well. And he's terrifying as well because of the things that he's done and the things he knows. And the conversations we have can be really, really quite sort of mind blowing. But I always know when I'm onto a good thing when I say to Joey, "What about this? Could I do that? Would that work?" And then he goes, "Oh, yeah, you could. I've never seen it done, but you could do it." And that's actually at the heart of the fifth book. There's a moment like that that's in the heart of the fifth book. So I was quite chuffed about that.
Yeah, in No Way Out, they used firemen as well. Were they? Did you ask any questions of them or?
Yes, my husband teases me that I'm doing this because I want to spend time with men in uniform, which may or may not have some truth to it. But yeah, I was very lucky. I went down and spent a whole morning with the Oxford firefighting team, which is in the centre of town. And it was really fascinating. I got to see all the equipment and he showed me all the details. We went in the area where they do the training. You've probably seen things like that on TV. It's one of these dark rooms where they'll fill it full of smoke and then they train firefighters on how to deal with it, how to recover bodies and unfortunate things like that. But yes, it was particularly interesting because one of them was a official fire investigator. So he sat down with me and went through several actual cases of how they'd conducted investigations of suspicious fires and what they look for and how they document it and what the procedures are and how they liaise with the police and things like that. So that was really fascinating, and I ended up putting a fire scene report actually in that book, which I ran past him before it was published. So it's just authentic, and it was, and he quite enjoyed doing it and seeing how our conversation had turned into a story.
I always find those bits fascinating on audio because they come out so different.
Yes.
How did that page? Sorry.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges. I'm always giving challenges to my production team as well, the physical book production team, where every single time there's something that they haven't done before. So all the rage, it was maps. We hadn't had maps before. So there's always something different and new where they have to find a way of doing the layout. So that's I don't know whether they curse me or they enjoy it, but they do a great job.
With audiobooks becoming more and more popular, do you think you'll end up doing a special for audio, or do you think that's too complicated for now?
You mean just do it on audio, or
yeah, just do it for audio, like with Audible or something. Yeah.
Oh well, I don't know. We need to really change the format for the audiobooks. I mean, I think they do them really well. So I have no problem with how they're being done at the moment. So I doubt we're going to change that in the near future.
I really do enjoy the audio format. But I'm trying to think of another question here. Yeah, I think I might have covered everything, but I think one question that people would want to know is how are you coping with lockdown at the moment?
Well, it's a strange one, isn't it? See, my sort of working day hasn't actually changed that much. I mean, I would be working here anyway. My hours of working are a bit different, but partly because I'm finding it quite hard to concentrate at the moment. I know a lot of my writer friends are saying the same thing, and people who aren't writers too. You know, people who say I'm not reading as much as I thought I would. I thought, I was on holiday. It was like I was on holiday. Therefore, I would read, but it hasn't sort of panned out that way. And I think a lot of people are in the same position because it's quite unsettling. We don't know what's going to happen, and we can't do lots of things that we would normally want to do. So I am working, but I'm not probably working quite as many hours in the day as I normally would. So it's okay. I mean, my husband's around a lot more. I've seen loads of him. The cats can't understand why he's in the house all the time. But so and I'm very lucky. I've got a garden, which I think is making all the difference. And I feel so sorry for people who can't get outside, especially with the lovely weather we had last week. But yeah, I mean, I'm by comparison with so many other people, I'm very lucky. So I don't have anything I can complain about.
I was just thinking of what could you recommend for people to read next that you've got in your pile?
Oh, well, one of the ones I've recommended in my newsletter recently, which I think people would enjoy, is Magpie Lane by Lucy Atkins, also set in Oxford. And it's a bit like Close to Home in some ways, because it's a young child that goes missing, though she comes from a very different sort of social group to Daisy in Close to Home. But it's beautifully written. Lucy's a lovely person as well. And it really evokes the city. There's all sorts of little gems about Oxford in there that I didn't know, and I've lived here for quite a while. So I really recommend that one. That's a good immersive read for lockdown, definitely. I've gone back to some of my old favourites as well. I think the sort of comfort reading aspect now is we shouldn't be ashamed of things like going back and reading old favourites. You don't have to always read something new. If an old favourite helps you through the night, then that's fine.
If anyone's got a final question for Cara, yeah.
Shall I have a look? I'll have a look. Joe's asking where she can get a signed book. It's a good question. I'll come back to Joe separately on that one. But and recommend another book to read while waiting for the next one. Let's have a think. I think I'm going to recommend one I read a long time ago, which is Nikki French's first one, which is The Memory Game. So I would recommend that. That's a really, really good book.
Thank you so much for this. It's been great as a kid.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
No problem. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot, Alex. See you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.